You're asleep, completely out, zero awareness of anything happening around you. By every biological definition that matters, you are helpless. Now, picture where you actually are. Not your bedroom. A tent. A genuinely, almost embarrassingly thin piece of nylon separates you from a forest absolutely full of animals that could end you without much effort at all if they felt like it. Lions, bears, wolves, leopards, creatures that can hear your heartbeat from across a clearing, smell you from over a mile away, and see perfectly in total darkness while you're lying there with your eyes shut and your guard completely down. And yet you wake up in the morning, every single time. Why? Seriously, sit with this for a second. A sleeping human is just meat. Slow meat, quiet meat. Meat that can't fight back, can't run, and can barely even register that something's happening until it's already happening. You'd expect predators to be circling campsites every night like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. They're not. They rarely are. And the reason isn't one thing. It's never just one thing. It's several layered explanations stacked on top of each other, and together they add up to something that looks almost like an unspoken agreement between humans and the wild, one that goes back further than civilization, further than farming, further than anything we'd normally think of as human history. Let's start with the part that sounds like an ego trip but is actually just biology. You are terrifying. Not you personally, sitting there right now, probably harmless. Humans as a species, to predators, are genuinely, deeply, evolutionarily frightening, and it's not obvious just from looking at us. We don't have claws. We're not fast, we're not especially strong for our size. We can't even see properly in the dark. On paper, we're kind of a disaster as an animal. And yet, in 2017, researchers at UC Santa Cruz, led by Justine Smith, as part of the Santa Cruz Puma Project, ran an experiment that confirmed exactly how deep this fear runs. They rigged motion-activated speakers at puma kill sites in the Santa Cruz Mountains. When a puma returned to feed, the equipment triggered and played either the croak of a Pacific tree frog as a control or a recording of ordinary people talking. Across 29 separate trials with 17 different pumas, the animals fled from human voices in 83% of cases, from the frog sound exactly once. And it wasn't a small, hesitant retreat. These are animals capable of dragging a full kill up a steep hillside, capable of taking down prey many times their own body weight, without much trouble at all. They heard a recording of somebody talking, and they bolted. It gets worse for the pumas, honestly. The same research showed that these cats abandoned food they'd already killed, food they were actively feeding on, the moment human voices played nearby. They left the meal on the ground and simply walked away. From a pure survival standpoint, that is an enormous cost. A predator abandoning a kill has essentially hunted for free, burned real calories it will never get back, and they did it anyway, because being anywhere near the sound of us was worse than staying hungry. Later analysis from the same research group found that pumas exposed to regular human activity fed for roughly half as long on each kill, and to compensate for those lost calories, they had to kill about 36% more deer overall just to break even. This wasn't some one-off fluke either. Biologists have documented the same basic pattern across multiple continents and completely different species. Lions in South Africa's Kruger National Park measurably reduce their movement in areas with heavier human activity. Tigers across India give wide berth to villages, even when those villages sit right in the middle of otherwise prime habitat. Jaguars in the Amazon have shifted their entire movement patterns specifically to avoid places where humans are regularly present. These aren't animals physically incapable of attacking us. These are animals that have collectively decided, across thousands of generations, that being anywhere near us simply isn't worth it. And the reason for that decision is one of the more brutal facts in natural history. We have been hunting and killing large predators so relentlessly and so effectively for so long that we've directly reshaped their genetics. Humans have been active apex predators for somewhere around 2 million years. We hunted mammoths into extinction. We wiped entire megafauna off whole continents. Giant ground sloths, woolly rhinos, cave bears, animals that had already survived multiple ice ages, gone within a relatively short window of humans arriving in their territory. In North America specifically, we hunted wolves to near extinction across the entire continental landmass and eliminated mountain lions from the eastern half of the continent. We shot, trapped, and poisoned large predators so systematically and for so long that the individuals alive today are quite literally descended from the ones that were most cautious around us. That's not a metaphor. That's natural selection running in real time. The lions that approached human settlements boldly were killed. The wolves that preyed on livestock and people were hunted down without mercy. The ones that kept their distance, that treated humans as something to specifically avoid rather than engage with, those were the ones that survived long enough to reproduce and pass that inherited caution forward. Generation after generation, that caution hardened into instinct. It became the biological default setting of essentially every large predator that still shares space with humans today. So when a leopard catches your scent somewhere out in the dark, there's an old wired-in alarm that fires somewhere deep in its nervous system. Not a conscious thought exactly, nothing sitting there reasoning through human history. Just an ancient, inherited signal that says be careful around that thing, don't engage, move on. That alarm was handed down from every single ancestor of that leopard who survived a close encounter with us. It's a biological memory, and it runs deep. Now let's talk about your smell, because it's stranger than you'd think. You've probably never really considered how you smell, because you're constantly surrounded by other humans and have fully normalized it. But to a predator, working with a nose that can be anywhere from roughly 10 times to potentially over 100,000 times more sensitive than yours, depending on species, you are broadcasting an enormous, detailed, and genuinely bizarre chemical signal. Bears have a sense of smell estimated at around 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's. Wolves can pick up certain scents from close to 2 miles away under the right conditions. Big cats carry a specialized structure in the roof of the mouth, the Jacobson's organ, that lets them essentially taste the air and process chemical information at a resolution we can't meaningfully imagine. When one of these animals encounters a sleeping human, it's receiving an absolute flood of olfactory data, and a lot of that data simply doesn't compute. You smell wrong. You smell like synthetic nylon and polyester, and whatever compounds were used to manufacture your gear. You smell like the food you ate hours ago, and the snacks still sitting in your bag. You smell like soap, shampoo, sunscreen, insect repellent, an entire cocktail of artificial compounds with no real equivalent anywhere in the natural world. Underneath all of that, sure, you smell vaguely like a primate. But a primate isn't the pattern. It's not the deer, the wildebeest, the rabbit, the specific prey template these predators have refined and calibrated across millions of years of actually hunting it. A predator's hunting instinct isn't some vague, generic urge to chase anything that moves. It's a finely tuned system built around specific, familiar prey. You simply don't fit that pattern. You register as an anomaly, and anomalies overwhelmingly trigger caution in predators, not aggression. Then there's fire, which might be the single most underrated thing humans have ever figured out. Fire produces something close to a universal fear response across virtually every land animal on Earth. And critically, it isn't learned. It's not something an animal has to personally experience to understand. It's innate, wired in from birth. Animals that instinctively feared fire survived wildfires by running early. Animals that didn't generally survive them at all. That fear runs so deep into the evolutionary code that lab-raised animals with zero prior exposure to fire in their entire lives still show clear avoidance behavior at nothing more than the smell of smoke. Humans figured out how to control fire somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, and for the overwhelming majority of that time, sleeping close to a fire has simply been standard practice. We weren't only doing it for warmth or for cooking. We were doing it, likely without ever fully realizing it consciously, because it functions as a genuinely effective repellent. A campfire doesn't just keep you warm through the night. It broadcasts a signal out into the surrounding dark that says something dangerous is here, something that controls fire, something worth staying well away from. Predators have been receiving that exact signal for so long that it barely needs decoding anymore. It simply triggers avoidance, automatically. You figured that one out before farming, before pottery, before writing, before architecture. Fire first. Genuinely smart move. Now, let's kill the biggest myth about predators, because film and television have gotten this completely wrong for decades. Predators are not reckless. This matters enormously. The image of the apex predator as a fearless, unstoppable killing machine that attacks anything unlucky enough to wander into range is pure fiction. In reality, large predators are extraordinarily cautious about what they choose to engage with, because they genuinely have to be. A lion doesn't have health insurance. A wolf doesn't get sick days. One serious injury, a broken leg, a deep bite wound, or a damaged eye, can mean a slow death by starvation. In the wild, injuries don't get treated at a clinic. They either heal on their own while the animal is still somehow expected to hunt and eat, or they don't heal and the animal dies. which means every single decision a predator makes about whether to engage with something is genuinely a survival calculation. Is this specific target worth the real risk of injury? Is it familiar enough that I actually know how it's going to behave? Are the odds of a clean, successful hunt high enough to justify the energy I'm about to spend? A sleeping human fails that calculation on multiple fronts simultaneously. First, unfamiliarity. A predator is most confident attacking prey it already knows intimately, prey it has watched hundreds of times, prey whose blind spots, panic responses, and typical movement it already understands cold. It has no comparable model for how a human is going to respond. We're wildly unpredictable by comparison. We might wake up screaming, we might have tools within reach, we might have other humans nearby who respond instantly and violently. We might thrash around in ways that follow no recognizable pattern at all. For a predator trying to minimize real risk, that level of uncertainty is a massive warning sign on its own. Second, sheer size. Standing upright, humans are genuinely large, and our bipedal posture makes us read as considerably bigger and more imposing than most prey of equivalent actual body weight. Researchers studying predator-prey dynamics have pointed out that walking upright functions almost like a built-in threat display. It's what gorillas do specifically to look intimidating. It's what bears do when they want to appear larger and more dangerous. An animal that simply walks around like that as its default, everyday posture reads as inherently assertive to other species, and even asleep, the overall silhouette and shape of a human body doesn't read as an easy meal. Third, and maybe the simplest reason of all, why bother? There are almost always easier options sitting right there. A predator with a healthy, intact territory has access to prey it already knows, prey it's comfortable hunting, prey that actually fits its evolved template. Going after something strange, unfamiliar, and potentially dangerous when a perfectly available impala or rabbit is sitting right nearby makes no sense whatsoever from a pure survival standpoint. The risk-reward math simply doesn't add up. Here's something that rarely comes up in these conversations, and it changes the whole picture. Your sleep is genuinely not as deep as you think it is. This is actually one of the more remarkable facts about human biology in general. Sleep runs in cycles. You drop down into deep, slow-wave sleep, then rise back up through lighter stages, including REM sleep, during which your brain is actually quite active. And critically, during those lighter stages, researchers have found the human brain stays surprisingly responsive to the surrounding environment. External sounds still get processed. Unfamiliar noises are considerably more likely to break through into full waking awareness than familiar, expected ones. Scientists refer to this as the sentinel function of sleep, the idea that even while resting, animals, humans absolutely included, maintain a kind of partial, ongoing watch over the environment. Your brain, during those lighter sleep stages, is still actively filtering sensory input and flagging anything that seems unusual or genuinely threatening. A twig snapped unusually loudly nearby, the sound of something large moving through brush, a shift in air pressure and scent that comes specifically with something big approaching. These things can pull a sleeping person toward waking considerably faster than you'd expect. This isn't a lucky accident either. Across our evolutionary history, humans who slept too deeply, who stayed completely unresponsive to nighttime threats, were simply more likely to never wake up at all. The lighter sleepers, the ones capable of going from fully asleep to on their feet within seconds, were the ones who survived long enough to pass that trait on. Over hundreds of thousands of years, human sleep got genuinely tuned to stay light enough to respond, partly because our evolutionary inheritance always assumed there would be something in the dark worth waking up for. So while you feel completely helpless while unconscious, you're actually running a reasonably sophisticated early warning system the entire time. Not perfect, not foolproof, but genuinely present and active. Then there's the group factor. Humans are rarely truly alone when camping in the wild. We travel in groups, sleep in groups, and those groups respond collectively the moment something goes wrong. Predators across the animal kingdom understand group dynamics at a genuinely deep level, precisely because their normal prey also moves in groups. A wildebeest in the center of a herd is dramatically safer than one caught at the edge. A fish in the middle of a school is far harder to target than one that's been separated. Predators don't just attack prey indiscriminately, they specifically hunt for separation. For the isolated individual, the one that's fallen behind, the one cut off from the rest of the group. A camp full of sleeping humans is a group, and specifically the kind of group where, if one member wakes up and makes noise, the rest are likely to wake up right along with them. That collective, unpredictable response is deeply unappealing to a predator trying to pull off a clean, low-risk kill. The real risk of a hunt spiraling into a chaotic group defense situation is exactly the kind of outcome predators are evolved to avoid at almost any cost. Now, an honest pause here, because this video would be genuinely irresponsible without it. None of this means you're untouchable. The attacks that do happen, and they absolutely do happen, follow a remarkably consistent pattern. They almost always involve circumstances where the normal rules have already broken down somehow. A predator that's injured and physically can't hunt its normal prey anymore. A predator is starving because its habitat's been destroyed and its usual food sources have vanished. A predator that's had so much repeated contact with humans that it's lost its inherited wariness entirely, which can happen disturbingly fast once animals start associating human presence with food instead of danger. Or simply a predator that's old, past its physical prime, and no longer capable of catching what it used to. The Tsavo lions of Kenya are the most famous case study here. Over roughly 9 months in 1898, 2 maneless male lions attacked and killed railway workers building a bridge across the Tsavo River. Historical death toll estimates range anywhere from around 28 up to considerably higher figures depending on the source, and the story grew considerably in the retelling over the following century. What tends to get left out of the popular version, though, is that these were genuinely atypical lions. Being maneless was itself unusual, and later examination of their skulls, now held at Chicago's Field Museum, revealed one of the pair suffered from a broken canine tooth and a serious dental abscess, almost certainly making its normal prey considerably harder to catch and forcing it toward easier, more available targets. These weren't representative lion behavior. They were an exception created by exceptional, specific circumstances. The Champawat tiger tells the same story with an even higher body count, an estimated 436 deaths across Nepal and India in the years leading up to 1907, making her the most prolific man-eating animal ever documented. When hunter Jim Corbett finally tracked and killed her, he found the explanation immediately. Her canine teeth on one side had been shattered by an earlier gunshot wound, almost certainly making it physically difficult, maybe impossible, for her to bring down her normal prey. Injury, followed by habitat pressure, pushed her toward the one food source that remained consistently available and physically manageable for a tiger that could no longer hunt normally. The same basic pattern repeats across nearly every well-documented case of large predator attacks on humans at rest or in camp. Something broke. The normal calculation changed. Inherited caution got overridden by genuine desperation, which actually means the underlying rule holds almost universally under normal conditions. A healthy predator, an intact ecosystem, and humans who haven't done something to actively scramble the usual signals, leaving food out carelessly, approaching wildlife directly, or deciding the campfire seems unnecessary tonight. There's one final layer to all this, saved for the end because it's genuinely the most mind-bending part of the whole story. We've been so effective at making the natural world afraid of us that it's now creating consequences nobody originally anticipated. That same Puma research not only documents that mountain lions are afraid of humans, it documented that this fear cascades outward through the entire surrounding food web in ways that are genuinely difficult to fully control. When pumas actively avoid areas with regular human activity, the deer living in those same areas face measurably reduced predation pressure. Deer populations in those zones grow. That larger deer population then overgrazes local vegetation. Meanwhile, medium-sized predators, coyotes, bobcats, and foxes also tend to reduce their own presence near humans, which means the rodent populations they'd normally keep in check start expanding unchecked as well. Everything shifts, and it shifts specifically because of us, because the fear we've generated across countless generations radiates outward through the ecosystem, almost like a signal. We reshape the behavior of an entire predator hierarchy across a continent without ever directly interacting with most of those individual animals at all. Just by existing, just by being the exact thing evolution has spent millennia teaching them to fear. The most dangerous animal on the planet is the one that figured out fire before it figured out almost anything else. The one that's been quietly reshaping entire ecosystems, not just through what it eats directly, but through what it makes everything else too afraid to eat. The one that sleeps lightly, travels in groups, and carries somewhere around 10,000 generations of successful survival encoded directly into its biology. That's you. That's genuinely what you are. So the next time you're lying in a tent somewhere in the middle of nowhere, listening to the sounds of the dark just beyond that thin nylon wall, and you feel that small, old pulse of ancient unease, That's completely fine. That exact feeling kept your ancestors alive long enough for you to exist at all. But the thing moving around out there in the dark, it's not coming in. It already knows better.